Dear reader, before we jumpstart this chapter on handling the no-budget objections, allow me to warn you that without the tools to banish such an objection, you will not close the sales. True? Jokes aside, as an avid reader of this book, How to Handle All Kinds of Sales Objections, it is wise to tell you beforehand the purpose of including this chapter. For your info, this objection is a popular objection used by evasive buyers or customers. So be forewarned. Before we examine the nitty-gritty of this chapter, do allow me to preview the salient points. Alright, in essence, we must first qualify what is the real definition of a company purchases budget. Sometimes it could mean that the company has a cash flow issue. Plus it's a standard and complicated concern for many new businesses. Believe me, sometimes talking with someone higher up and justify your price before moving towards approval. Rephrase as they actually don't have the budget space. And there is the misunderstanding between financial budget and budget space. Lastly, take careful note the steps in overcoming budget constraints mentioned below. Enough of my long preview, let's dive deep into the chapter proper. Alright, thanks. Chapter 4. Overcoming Budget Objection in a Sales Interview. Quote, a budget tells us what we can't afford, but it doesn't keep us from buying it. By William Feather. He was an American publisher and author, based in Cleveland, Ohio. Allow me kickstart the chapter with this searching question. Alright, what is a customer's purchases budget? A purchases budget guides the real amount of inventory that a company must purchase during each budget period. In plain truth, it's the amount stated in the budget that is needed to ensure that there is sufficient inventory on hand to meet customer orders for products. At the simplest level, the purchases budget can simply match the exact number of units expected to be sold in the budget period. However, there are a number of additional considerations that can make the purchases budget considerably more complex. In this chapter, when the prospect says they don't have the budget, it may be the prospect's company has a cash flow issue. Furthermore, you may get the no money objection similar to the expense objection, but you can solve it over time. This is a standard concern for many new businesses. They may have limited funds, and if your product or service costs more than what was allotted, the customer has little power to speak up about it. You can always try talking with someone higher up and justify your price before moving towards approval. If your prospect's cash flow issues, give a follow-up call with the executives and ensure a budget. On the other hand, such objections may rephrased as they actually don't have the budget space. This could be a similar objection that's related to price. However, this minor difference does require a slightly different approach, since it has more to do with the prospect's own cash flow issues rather than a problem with how they perceive the value of your product or service. When faced with such difficulties, you can navigate this issue either by working out an alternative payment plan that allows them to balance their budget in the short and long term, or by arranging a time to speak again in the next quarter. Make no mistake, if you have asked for budgets before, then you have probably heard this line from a prospect. Most salespeople tell me that asking for budgets simply doesn't work, but my response is always the same. Such things do happen because you're doing it wrong. Now, this may sound mean or condescending, but it's true. Asking for a budget works, it just requires the proper approach. If you aren't getting budgets issues from prospects, then you should start. And if you are trying to get budgets and not getting them, then you should change your approach. There is a very simple approach to asking for a budget that will work almost all of the time. Hence, in this chapter, I'm going to show you how any salesperson can handle the objection, I don't have a budget. In this respect, here are 5 time-tested and hands-on proven steps to handle prospects' no budget to buy. Step 1. Establish the cost of their challenges first. Then ask for a budget. So, what do I mean by this? You must really establish a budget through questions and conversation. Find out how much it's costing your prospects right now to not actually solve those challenges. Once you've had that conversation, then it's time to ask, do you have a budget for this project? It's a very simple question, but your prospect is pretty likely to say no when you ask. Just be ready and don't freak out. Step 2. Roll with it and explain. If your prospect says there's no budget, stay really calm and act like it's no big deal. Just say, totally makes sense. The reason I ask is because I want to avoid us having to go back and forth after I've put together a proposal. Step 3. Hang in there. Just because prospects say they don't have a budget, that doesn't mean it's over. Just get right back on the horse, and hang in there. Respond with something that sounds like this. In order to solve the problem that you say is costing you around Rm 1 million, what could you see investing in this project? If you have a strong connection and trust, prospects will hang in there with you. But let's just imagine at this point that there's still nothing. The prospect says, you know what? I just don't know. Now, it's time to pull out the range. Step 4. Give a range. Now, giving a range isn't the best place to start, but if you just keep on hitting a wall, it's time for the range. The range sounds something like this. George, in order to accomplish what we discussed, I can tell you that we're going to be somewhere between Rm 100,000 and Rm 400,000. Where in that range could you see yourself investing? Now, notice how wide that range was. I'm not really giving the prospect that much information, I'm just letting him feel like I threw out some numbers. What's amazing is that once you throw out some numbers, even that wide range, prospects are very likely to share with you a specific number. It's really incredible. Suddenly, they have a specific budget. Step 5. Don't leave until you've established a budget. You have a right as a salesperson to get on the same page with money before you put together a proposal. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Nothing will save you more pain and heartache than clarifying that budget. The key is to be totally committed to agreeing on a budget before you go to the proposal stage. All in all, before concluding this chapter, it pays to remember the importance of knowing and overcoming budget objections. Furthermore, be alert that the buyers may use this objection as an excuse not to buy from you. Agree or not? To do a quick recap, it's wise to state the following points. Okay, in a nutshell, we must qualify what is the definition of a company purchases budget. Because it could mean that the company has a cash flow issue. Usually it's a standard and complicated concern for many new businesses. At times when talking with higher up and justify your price with them before may overcome the budget constraints. Remember, take note there is also the misunderstanding between financial budget and budget space. Not forgetting to take careful note the said steps in overcoming budget constraints. In truth, we as ambitious sales personnels must take heed of this tricky type objections. Therefore, when faced with budget limitations, buyers do apply the 5-step of overcoming graciously and diplomatically. Possible? You bet. To leave a footprint of this chapter, allow me to quote a famous lady named Rosette Mugid Wamambe. She was born and grew up in Kampala, Uganda. From a very young age, Rosette dreamt of becoming a lawyer. She says, budgeting is not just for people who do not have enough money. It is for everyone who wants to ensure that their money is enough. So there you have it. Now you know exactly how any salesperson can handle the objection, I don't have a budget. Agree? End of chapter 4. P.S. I want to hear from you. Have you ever tried to solve the budget's objection from a prospect? If so, what was the result? Be sure to share your views with the author's sites at YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Also the writer's email at josephs@gmail.com. Hope we meet again in chapter 5.